She had spent 7 years believing the cruelest thing a man could do was stop loving her, until she watched her husband kiss the woman who had sworn to destroy them both. Luna Elowen Marlowe stood perfectly still beneath the silver torchlight of Blackwood Castle, one hand clutching the folds of her ceremonial gown as laughter and music drifted faintly from the feast below. She had come to find her husband before the moonbond ceremony, carrying a secret she had waited years to tell him, something so precious she had imagined his face 100 different ways when he finally heard it. Instead, 20 paces from their wedding chamber, she heard a woman's voice. "She can never know what you promised me." Elowen knew that voice. Vanessa Hale, the enemy whose soldiers had burned Blackwood villages, whose family had spilled the blood of Caelan's people for 2 generations. Elowen moved toward the corner before fear could stop her, her slippers silent against the ancient stone. Then she saw them. Alpha King Caelan Veyr stood beneath the arched window, broad shoulders unmistakable beneath his black ceremonial coat. Vanessa was pressed against him, one pale hand curled around the collar Elowen herself had fastened that morning. For one terrible second, Elowen's mind refused to understand what her eyes already knew. Then Vanessa rose onto her toes, and Caelan kissed her. The world did not shatter. That was almost worse. The torches continued burning. Music continued playing below. Somewhere in the courtyard, a horse stamped against stone. Everything remained exactly as it had been, while something inside Elowen quietly died. Her fingers went numb. The secret she had carried all evening suddenly felt impossibly heavy, and her free hand moved instinctively beneath her ribs, pressing against the crescent-shaped mark hidden under her gown. Heat pulsed beneath her palm. Once, twice. Then pain sliced through her so sharply that she nearly gasped. Elowen bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. She would not make a sound. She would not give either of them the satisfaction of seeing Luna Elowen Marlowe collapse in a corridor outside her own wedding chamber. Caelan pulled away from Vanessa. Elowen's heart betrayed her with one desperate hope that he would push the woman aside, that he would look horrified by what he had done. Instead, she heard Vanessa whisper, "Tomorrow, everything changes." Elowen waited for Caelan to deny it. He didn't. Something cold settled inside her. 7 years beside him. 7 years defending his throne, tending his wounded, calming frightened villages while their king fought his wars. 7 years believing that whatever else Caelan might be, ruthless, proud, feared, he belonged to her as surely as she belonged to him. Foolish girl. Elowen stepped backward. Her heel brushed the stone, but neither of them heard. She turned away without confronting him, without demanding an explanation, without shedding the tears burning behind her eyes. With every silent step, the crescent mark beneath her gown grew hotter. By the time she reached the end of the corridor, its silver light had begun fading beneath her skin. Far below Blackwood Castle, beyond chambers no living king had entered for centuries, an ancient flame flickered inside the moon shrine. The flame had burned through wars, plagues, rebellions, and the deaths of 11 kings. That night, as Elowen walked away from Caelan without looking back, it went out. By sunrise, the only proof that Blackwood had ever possessed a Luna was the silver ring Elowen left behind. Caelan found it on the table beside their bed, resting on a folded piece of parchment so small that for several seconds he simply stared at it, unable to understand what he was seeing. The room smelled faintly of lavender, her scent still caught in the curtains, but her wardrobe stood half empty, and the white ceremonial gown she had worn the night before lay abandoned across a chair. Elowen, his voice carried through the chamber. Nothing answered. He unfolded the parchment. There were no accusations, no questions, no desperate pleas for an explanation. Only 9 words written in Elowen's careful hand. "I hope what you chose was worth what it cost." Caelan's jaw tightened. She had seen him. Of course she had. For one uncomfortable moment, memory returned with brutal clarity. Vanessa's fingers against his collar, the dangerous conversation outside the wedding chamber, the kiss he should have ended before it began. Caelan crushed the parchment in his fist. He told himself Elowen had gone somewhere to punish him, perhaps to her mother's old estate beyond the eastern woods. She would calm down. She would return. She always returned. For 7 years Elowen had remained beside him through wars, assassination attempts, famine, and winters when half the northern packs threatened rebellion. One mistake could not erase 7 years. At least, that was what pride allowed him to believe. By noon, his guards confirmed that Elowen had ridden through the western gate before dawn with one horse and a single traveling bag. She had taken no jewels, no royal gold, not even the winter cloak embroidered with the Luna's crest. "Send riders," Caelan ordered. Vanessa stood beside the council table, watching him with unreadable eyes. "Would that be wise?" she asked softly. "She wants you to chase her." Caelan looked toward the windows. Beyond them, Blackwood stretched beneath a pale morning sky, powerful and unbroken. "Then I won't." Miles away, Elowen rode west without once looking behind her. Every movement of the horse sent another ache through her exhausted body. Her eyes burned from tears she refused to shed, and beneath her ribs the crescent mark had faded from brilliant silver to the color of dying ash. She pressed her palm against it and felt something strange. Not pain now, but absence, as though an invisible cord stretched between herself and Blackwood were unraveling strand by strand. She didn't know what would happen when it broke completely. She only knew she could no longer remain where her love had become humiliation. Behind her, the first sign came quietly. In the village beneath Blackwood Castle, an old woman lowered a bucket into the sacred well as she had every morning for 50 years. When she pulled it back up, the water no longer shimmered silver. At the northern watchtower, 3 wolves began howling toward an empty morning sky. Beneath the castle, a priest discovered a hairline crack running across the altar of the moon shrine. By evening, the crack had doubled in length. Caelan noticed none of it. He stood before the council discussing borders and soldiers while Elowen's ring remained hidden inside his clenched fist. He still believed he had lost an angry wife. He had no idea that with every mile his Luna placed between herself and Blackwood, his kingdom was beginning to lose something too. 3 weeks passed before Blackwood began to understand that Elowen's silence was not punishment. It was absence, and absence had teeth. At first, the changes were small enough for Caelan to dismiss. The sacred well beneath the eastern village stopped glowing beneath the full moon. Hunters reported that wolves who had followed Blackwood's commands for generations now wandered beyond the borders as though they could no longer sense where the kingdom ended. Then the harvest began to rot. Wheat that had stood golden and healthy one evening turned gray by morning. Entire fields collapsing beneath a frost that should not have come for another 2 months. Caelan ordered grain released from the royal stores. He blamed weather, poor soil, frightened farmers, anything that could be conquered with commands. But the kingdom continued unraveling. On the 21st night after Elowen left, the northern moon beacon went dark. Caelan was awakened by bells before dawn. He entered the council chamber still fastening his sword belt and found 12 pale faces waiting for him. "The beacon has never failed," Lord Harrow said. "Not during the Red Winter. Not during your father's rebellion. Never." Caelan's wolf shifted restlessly beneath his skin. "Then repair it." No one moved. "Your Majesty," another councilman whispered, "it isn't broken." Before Caelan could answer, the doors burst open. A commander staggered inside, blood staining one sleeve. 3 border packs had refused an Alpha command during a Silvercrest raid. They had heard Caelan's order, but the ancient compulsion binding Blackwood's wolves to their king simply had not answered. Worse followed. Children approaching their first shift were waking feverish and terrified, unable to reach their wolves. Mated couples complained that their bonds felt distant. Pregnant shifters were being moved from villages where sacred wells had turned black. Blackwood was not being attacked. It was coming apart from within. Caelan gripped the edge of the council table until the oak groaned beneath his fingers. For the first time since taking the throne, issuing an order felt useless. His gaze moved unconsciously toward the empty chair at his right. Elowen's chair. He remembered how she used to sit there quietly while men twice her age spoke over her, only to solve disputes after everyone else had exhausted themselves. He remembered villages where people had touched her hands as she passed. Children who stopped crying when she entered a room. Soldiers who asked for the Luna's blessing before battle. He had called those things affection, tradition, sentiment. Now her chair looked less like an empty seat and more like a wound. "Where is Lady Hale?" Caelan demanded suddenly. Vanessa had missed the council for the 2nd morning in succession. No one knew. A cold sensation crawled along his spine. Then the chamber doors opened again, this time without violence. High Priestess Maeve entered carrying a dead branch from the sacred moon tree. Every man at the table stood. The branch had turned completely black. Maeve placed it before Caelan. "When did this begin?" she asked. 3 weeks ago." Her ancient eyes lifted to his. "Exactly 3 weeks?" Caelan said nothing. His fist closed around the silver ring he had carried in his pocket since the morning Elowen disappeared. Maeve saw it. The blood drained from her face. "Your Majesty," she whispered, and for the first time Caelan heard genuine fear in the priestess's voice. "Where is your Luna?" The room went silent. Caelan stared at Elowen's empty chair, and somewhere beneath Blackwood Castle, another ancient light went out. "What does my wife have to do with this?" Caelan asked, but High Priestess Maeve did not answer immediately, and that silence frightened him more than any prophecy could have. She reached across the council table and opened his clenched hand, revealing Elowen's silver ring against his palm. "Everything," she whispered. Maeve ordered the council chamber emptied, then led Caelan beneath Blackwood Castle through a staircase hidden behind the old throne room. Descending farther than he had ever known the fortress went. The air grew colder with every step. At the bottom waited the moon shrine, an ancient circular chamber carved from white stone, its walls covered in symbols belonging to kings whose names had vanished from history. 7 silver flames should have burned around the central altar. Only 3 remained. "Your ancestors deliberately buried this truth," Maeve said. "Kings prefer believing kingdoms survive because kings are powerful." Caelan stared at the dying flames. "Then tell me the truth." Maeve turned toward him. "Blackwood is protected by 2 authorities. The Alpha Crown commands its wolves. The Crescent Luna binds them together." Caelan almost laughed from disbelief. Elowen had never commanded armies. She hated council politics and possessed no great alpha dominance. "Elowen, 7 years ago, 3 nights before your bonding ceremony, this shrine chose her." Maeve touched the altar, and silver markings awakened beneath her fingertips. The moon accepted Elowen Marlowe as the true Crescent Luna. Memory struck Caelan painfully. 7 years of unusually rich harvests. Border pacts ending old feuds after Elowen visited them. Sick children recovering after she sat beside their beds. Sacred wells glowing brighter wherever she traveled. He had noticed every miracle and credited none of them to her. "Why wasn't I told?" His voice came out rough. "She wanted to tell you herself when the final seal awakened." Maeve's expression hardened. That was supposed to happen on the night she left. Caelan's stomach dropped. The ceremony. The white gown. Elowen walking toward their wedding chamber while he stood outside it with Vanessa. She had been coming to tell him. "Bring her back," he said. "Send every rider in Blackwood." Maeve's eyes flashed. "You still don't understand." She placed both palms against the altar. A map of the kingdom appeared in silver light, but darkness was spreading across it from the castle outward. One region alone glimmered faintly somewhere far to the west. "The blessing does not belong to Blackwood. It does not belong to your bloodline, and it certainly does not belong to you." Caelan stared at the distant glow. "Then who does it belong to?" "Elowen." The answer landed harder than a blade. Maeve explained that the Crescent blessing followed its Luna only while she gave herself willingly to the kingdom she protected. No army could drag her back. No Alpha command could compel her. No marriage vow could imprison the moon's favor. If Elowen chose another land, Blackwood would continue dying until nothing remained but stone and memory. Caelan suddenly remembered countless nights when he returned from war to find her asleep over petitions from villages he had forgotten existed. He remembered her asking for grain before winter, healers for border settlements, mercy for rebellious pacts. He had thought her soft. Worse, he had thought her replaceable. His fingers closed around her ring until its edges cut his skin. Above them, another moon beacon extinguished, and the shrine trembled. For the first time in his life, Alpha King Caelan Veyr understood that Elowen had never needed his crown to make her powerful. His crown had needed her. Caelan expected to find a broken woman hiding from the world. Instead, he found a kingdom growing around her. It took 9 days of relentless riding before Elowen's trail led him beyond Blackwood's western boundary, through forests untouched by royal roads, and into a valley absent from every map in his war chamber. He smelled wood smoke first, then bread, horses, damp earth, and something impossible this far from Blackwood's dying heart, life. Green wheat covered the valley floor despite the frost-destroying crops throughout his kingdom. Children chased one another between timber cottages while men repaired a water wheel beside a river shining faintly silver beneath the afternoon sun. Caelan slowed his horse. These people were wolfless, widows, former servants, wounded soldiers, families expelled from packs that considered them burdens. He recognized their kind because Blackwood had spent generations pretending they did not exist. Yet here they had homes. "You're the king," a boy said from beside the road. Caelan looked down. The child did not bow. Neither did anyone else. His guards shifted uneasily behind him as villagers gathered, not with awe but suspicion. "Where is Elowen Marlowe?" Caelan asked. An elderly woman stepped forward. "Why?" The question stunned him. No one asked an Alpha King why. "She is my Luna." The woman's expression hardened. "She is Elowen here." Then the crowd parted. Caelan forgot how to breathe. Elowen stood beside a half-built cottage with her sleeves rolled above her elbows and flour dusting one cheek. No jewels, no royal gown, no Luna crest. Her dark traveling dress was simple, her hair loosely braided, yet the crescent mark visible near her collarbone glowed brighter than he had ever seen it inside Blackwood Castle. Everything around her seemed warmer. Alive. Caelan. His name sounded different in her voice now. Not intimate. Not angry. Simply distant. He dismounted and walked toward her, suddenly aware of Elowen's ring inside his coat. Blackwood is dying. Something flickered across her face. Pain, perhaps, but not surprise. "I know. The wells are failing. The moon beacons are going dark. Children cannot reach their wolves." He stopped before her. "Maeve told me what you are." Elowen's eyes lowered for a moment. "She told you what I was always going to tell you." Shame burned through him. "Come home." The words sounded like an order, so he forced himself to soften them. "Please." Elowen looked beyond him toward the distant mountains marking Blackwood's border. "This is my home now." Caelan's wolf surged beneath his skin, rejecting the words. "Blackwood needs its Luna." Silence spread through the valley. Elowen looked around at the people surrounding them. The unwanted, the discarded, those his kingdom had deemed too weak to matter. Then she met his eyes. Then perhaps Blackwood should have remembered her before it needed her. Caelan had faced armies without lowering his gaze. Now he could barely hold hers. Behind Elowen, the river shimmered silver. Crops bent beneath the wind, healthy and green. Children laughed beneath trees already producing fruit. The truth stood everywhere around him. Blackwood was dying while this forgotten valley flourished because the blessing had followed her. Not the throne, not the crown. Her. "Elowen," he said quietly, "I made a mistake." Her expression changed then, the calm finally cracking enough for him to glimpse the wound beneath it. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, Caelan. A mistake is choosing the wrong road." Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "You kissed the woman who has spent years trying to destroy our people outside the chamber where I was waiting to renew my bond with you." He had no answer. Elowen stepped closer, and for one desperate heartbeat he remembered the woman who had once reached for him without hesitation. But she stopped before touching him. "You came here because your kingdom is dying," she whispered. "Not because you finally understood why I left." Then she walked past him, and for the first time in Caelan Veyr's life, the most powerful alpha in the north stood surrounded by people who owed him nothing, watching the woman he had taken for granted leave him behind. Caelan did not leave Haven that night, and for the first time Elowen could remember, he did not command anyone to let him stay. He slept in the small stable beside his horse because no villager offered him a room, and when morning came, Elowen found the Alpha King splitting firewood with two wounded soldiers who seemed to take quiet pleasure in giving their king the dullest axe they owned. She almost smiled. Almost. But 7 years of love could not erase the image of Vanessa's mouth against his. Near sunset, Caelan found Elowen alone beside the silver river. "You were right," he said. She kept her eyes on the water. "About what?" "I came because Blackwood was dying." The admission made her look at him. There was no crown on his head, no royal coat across his shoulders. He looked exhausted. Human, almost. "But that isn't why I'm still here." Elowen's chest tightened. "Don't. You deserve the truth." Caelan stopped several feet away, careful not to touch her. "Vanessa came to me months ago claiming Silvercrest commanders were planning to assassinate me and invade Blackwood afterward. She offered names, routes, letters. Some of the information proved true. Elowen swallowed. So you met her? Secretly? Yes. And lied to me? Yes. Each answer came without defense. She said an alliance could prevent thousands of deaths. I convinced myself that keeping you ignorant was protecting you. His jaw tightened. The night you saw us, Vanessa told me Silvercrest would accept peace only if I proved I trusted her. Elowen's laugh was small and bitter. By kissing her, Caelan's eyes closed briefly. She kissed me first. Elowen turned away. How convenient. And I kissed her back. The word stopped her. Caelan could have lied. Could have blamed Vanessa, magic, politics, anything that left him innocent. He didn't. For one moment, he continued, his voice rough. I chose my pride, my fear, and my weakness over you. I knew it was wrong while I was doing it. I could have stopped her immediately. I didn't. Elowen felt tears sting her eyes, but anger held them there. Do you know what I was coming to tell you? She touched the crescent mark beneath her collarbone. I had spent 7 years waiting for the moon shrine to complete its blessing. That night it finally had. I thought you would be proud of me. Caelan's face broke in a way she had never seen before. Elowen, I was walking toward you thinking it might be the happiest night of my life. Her voice trembled. And you made it the night I understood I had built my entire happiness around a man who believed I would always be there. Caelan stepped forward, then stopped himself. I love you. Maybe you do. That answer hurt him more than hatred would have. But love without trust is only hunger, Caelan. And I will not return simply because you're hungry for what you lost. Silence settled between them. Then hoofbeats thundered from the northern road. A rider burst into haven, his horse foaming with exhaustion, Blackwood colors torn across his shoulder. He nearly fell while dismounting. Your Majesty. He dropped to one knee before Caelan. Silvercrest has crossed the northern border. Caelan went still. How many? Thousands. 3 armies. They knew exactly where our defenses would fail. The messenger dragged a sealed letter from inside his coat. And Lady Vanessa disappeared from Blackwood 2 nights ago. Elowen and Caelan looked at each other. Suddenly the kiss outside the wedding chamber felt like only one move in a game neither of them had understood. The messenger's next words turned Caelan's blood cold. She left this for the Luna. The letter contained only one sentence, but Elowen understood immediately that Vanessa had never been fighting for Caelan at all. Thank you for leaving exactly when I needed you to, Crescent Luna. The parchment trembled between Elowen's fingers. Caelan read the words over her shoulder, and she felt the instant his body went rigid. She knew, he said. Elowen looked at the exhausted messenger. How long has Silvercrest known about the northern defenses? They shouldn't know anything, my lady. Those routes were changed after the winter campaign. Caelan's face hardened. Vanessa knew. The pieces began locking together with sickening precision. The secret meetings, the intelligence Vanessa had conveniently provided, her insistence that Caelan prove his trust, the kiss outside the wedding chamber, and the strange confidence in her voice when she said everything would change tomorrow. Elowen had believed she had witnessed an affair. Now she understood she had witnessed a trap closing around an entire kingdom. She wanted me to see you, Elowen whispered. Caelan's eyes met hers. Neither of them needed to say what came next. Vanessa had known where Elowen would walk before the moonbond ceremony. She had chosen the corridor. She had chosen the moment. She had kissed Caelan knowing that if Elowen witnessed it, the Luna might leave voluntarily. Why not kill me? Elowen asked. The answer came from an unexpected voice. High Priestess Maeve had arrived with the messenger, her cloak still covered in road dust. Because killing a Crescent Luna would not destroy the blessing. Maeve stepped closer. The old laws protect against that. If you died defending Blackwood, the moon's favor would remain until another Luna was chosen. Elowen felt cold spread through her body. But if I abandoned the kingdom willingly, the blessing would withdraw with you, Maeve finished. No successor. No protection. Caelan turned away as though the words had struck him physically. Vanessa had not needed to defeat Blackwood's armies. She had needed its king to betray the one woman holding those armies together. And Caelan had done exactly what she expected. His fist slammed against the trunk of a nearby tree. Bark split beneath his knuckles. I opened the gates for her. Yes, Elowen said. Caelan looked at her, perhaps expecting comfort. But she would not soften the truth to protect him anymore. She manipulated you, Caelan. But she didn't make your choice for you. Blood ran across his knuckles. Slowly he nodded. I know. Another rider appeared on the road before anyone could speak again. This one barely remained in the saddle. The northern fortress has fallen, he shouted. Silvercrest controls the mountain pass. 2 eastern packs have surrendered. Their wolves can't feel the alpha bond strongly enough to fight. Caelan's expression changed instantly, the grieving husband disappearing beneath the warrior king. How long until they reach the capital? 3 days. Maybe 4. Elowen looked toward the distant mountains. Somewhere beyond them were servants who had once brought her tea, children whose names she remembered, soldiers whose wives had asked her to bring them home alive. Innocent people who had never kissed Vanessa Hale, never betrayed anyone, never chosen this war. Caelan approached her carefully. I won't ask you to come back for me. His voice was quiet. I lost the right. Elowen's crescent mark burned beneath her skin as if the moon itself were waiting for her answer. She looked around Haven, at the peaceful valley she could choose instead, then back toward the dying kingdom that had once broken her heart. For the first time, returning to Blackwood would not mean returning as Caelan's wife. It would mean returning because she had decided those people were still hers to protect. Elowen folded Vanessa's letter and placed it inside her coat. Get the horses ready, she said. We're going home. Elowen returned to Blackwood beneath a sky the color of ash, and no one waiting at the castle gates mistook her return for forgiveness. Thousands crowded the road as she rode beside Caelan through. Villages stripped of color, past dead fields and sacred wells gone dark. Some people cried when they recognized her. Others dropped to their knees. Elowen wanted to tell them to stand, but the grief on their faces stopped her. They were not kneeling to Caelan's wife. They were begging their Luna not to abandon them. Inside the castle, the council erupted the moment she entered. Generals shouted about Silvercrest troops less than a day's march away. Nobles demanded evacuation, and one lord ordered Elowen taken directly to the moon shrine. No, Caelan said. The room fell silent. He removed the black iron crown from his head and placed it on the council table. No one commands her. Then he turned to Elowen before everyone who had once treated her voice as secondary to his. Tell us what you need. It was the first time the Alpha King had surrendered authority to her without being forced. Elowen studied the war map. Evacuate the northern villages. Move the wounded south. Pull the eastern companies back to the river and stop defending the mountain road. A general stared at her. That gives Silvercrest a clear path to the capital. Exactly. Elowen pointed to the narrow valley below Blackwood. Vanessa believes our wolves are still disconnected. Let her army enter here, then close both sides. Caelan understood immediately. And the blessing? I restore it after they're trapped. Hours later, Elowen descended alone into the moon shrine. Only one flame remained. She approached the altar and pressed both hands against the freezing stone. Nothing happened. I will not return because a crown demands it, she whispered. I will not return because my husband betrayed me and now regrets the price. The final flame flickered. Elowen closed her eyes, seeing farmers, servants, frightened children, widows, soldiers, all the ordinary people whose lives existed beyond Caelan's mistake. I return because they are still mine to protect. Silver light exploded through the chamber. The crescent mark beneath her skin burned brilliantly, and 7 flames erupted around the altar at once. Across Blackwood, sacred wells turned silver. One moon beacon ignited, then another, then another, blazing across the mountains like stars falling to earth. On the battlefield, thousands of Blackwood wolves suddenly felt their bonds slam back into place. Caelan lifted his head as Elowen's presence surged through him, not possession, not obedience, but power freely given. Now, he roared. The valley closed around Silvercrest. The battle was brutal but short. Restored wolves struck from both ridges while Caelan led the center assault. By sunset, Vanessa Hale was dragged before the castle gates in chains. Caelan could have killed her there. Every soldier expected it. Instead, he lowered his sword. You will stand trial before the people whose deaths you engineered. Vanessa laughed bitterly. All this for the woman who left you. Caelan looked toward Elowen. No. This is because kings who rule by impulse destroy everything they claim to protect. That night, victory filled the great hall, but Elowen did not celebrate. When Caelan approached her before the gathered court, he suddenly went down on one knee. Gasps swept through the room. An Alpha King knelt to no one. I cannot undo what I did, he said. But if there is anything left in me worth trusting, I will spend however long it takes proving it. Elowen's eyes burned, yet she did not reach for him. Saving your kingdom does not restore my trust. Caelan bowed his head. I know. And for once, he asked for nothing more. 1 year later, Blackwood no longer looked like the kingdom Elowen had walked away from in silence. The fields were green again. Every moon beacon burned across the northern mountains, and Haven was no longer an invisible refuge beyond the border, but a recognized territory whose people held seats on the royal council. Caelan had kept every promise he made without asking Elowen to witness any of it. The laws governing the Luna had been rewritten so no future queen could be treated as an extension of her husband's crown. Wolfless citizens received the same protection as shifters. Border pacts were given representatives instead of orders delivered from distant nobles. Vanessa Hale stood trial before families from every village destroyed by her invasion and was sentenced to life. Imprisonment in the northern fortress, stripped permanently of title and command. Silvercrest's surviving leaders signed a peace treaty ending generations of war. Through all of it, Caelan never once asked Elowen to return to him. He visited Haven when council business required it, spoke to her with respect, and always left before sunset. No flowers. No desperate letters. No demands disguised as apologies. Elowen had once believed redemption would look dramatic, like a king kneeling before a crowded hall. Instead, she discovered it looked like hundreds of quiet choices made when no one was watching. On the first anniversary of Blackwood's restoration, Elowen returned to the castle alone. She walked through the corridor outside the wedding chamber where everything had broken and paused at the exact place she had seen Caelan kiss Vanessa. The memory still hurt, but it no longer controlled her. Then she continued downstairs to the moon shrine. Caelan was already there for the annual blessing, dressed simply in black, his crown left upstairs. Surprise crossed his face when Elowen entered. I didn't know you were coming. I know. She stopped before him and reached into her cloak. Caelan went completely still when she opened her hand. Her silver Luna ring rested in her palm. For a moment neither spoke. Elowen, he whispered, but she shook her head. Before you say anything, I need an answer. He waited. If there were no crown, no kingdom, no moon blessing, if I could give you nothing that made you stronger, richer, or more powerful, would you still choose me? Caelan looked at the woman before him, and this time there was no hesitation. I would choose you if choosing you cost me all three. Tears filled Elowen's eyes. A year ago those words would not have been enough. Today they were only the final piece of something he had already proven through action. She placed the ring in his hand. Then understand this too. I am not returning because Blackwood needs a crescent Luna. She stepped closer. I'm returning because I choose you. Caelan's breath caught. He did not grab her. He did not claim her. He waited. So Elowen closed the final distance herself, placed her hands against his face, and kissed him. Silver light erupted around them. Every flame in the moon shrine rose at once, illuminating the ancient walls as their bond returned, not as a chain, but as a promise freely remade. Months later, Elowen stood beside Caelan during the first joint council of Blackwood, Haven, and Silvercrest, not behind his throne but beside it. Peace held. The harvests returned. Children shifted safely beneath the full moon, and no moon beacon failed again. Caelan never forgot that a kingdom could survive a war more easily than a marriage could survive contempt, and Elowen never again confused forgiveness with surrender. She had walked away because she finally understood her worth. She returned because the man who lost her had finally learned it too.